Invizimals: The Lost Kingdom is a really average 3D platformer with elements of combat mixed in, like pretty much any game made in the 6th generation, but this one is inexplicably available on your PS3. The main idea behind the game's platforming is that you can transform into several different Invizimals, each with their own platforming abilities. Some Invizimals have grappling hooks, there are others that can teleport through walls, use telekinesis, run on dynamos, and so on. To the game's credit, every ability controls differently, but each Invisimal only has a couple, and to use them you just stand in the designated spot and press triangle. It's not exactly engaging. And although you have so many different abilities, they're never used together for multi-layered puzzles, which makes the whole thing feel kind of mechanical and boring. It's not as bare bones as 3D platforming design can get, but it's pretty close, and it never uses any of its tools for creative purposes. There is some enjoyment to be had in finding new Invizimals and using their abilities just to see what they look like, but at the halfway point through the game you stop getting new Invizimals with new abilities, and instead you find palette swaps of Invizimals you already have. This, combined with the utter lack of creativity in how the Invizimals' abilities are used, makes the game get really stale and boring. Not quite unbearable, but it's really average. In addition to the underwhelming platforming abilities, each Invisimal does have different abilities they can use in combat, but only a handful of the Invisimal abilities actually feel unique. The Ice Lion here, for example, can freeze enemies in their place, which not any other Invisimal can do. But most of them have a generic area attack, and there's very little difference between their heavy and light punches. In fact, you can pretty much just whale the light punch button the whole game if you'd like to. The combat does eventually get challenging, but it takes roughly 3.5 hours to get that far. Yeah, 3.5 hours. This game is a total 5 hour and 30 minutes in length, which is a little bit ridiculous for how simple it is. And even when the combat does get challenging, it basically just means you use the shield until there's an opening, and then you smash the light attack button or use your special attack. If there is something I find mildly interesting about the game, it's that the most basic collectibles, Z-Sparks, are actually used directly to upgrade your Invizimals. This may seem underwhelming, and it is, but I can't think of another 3D platformer where the most basic collectible is used to upgrade something. Unfortunately, the upgradable attacks are so average that you're not likely to notice a difference between them. I feel like it's necessary to point out that this game isn't bad by any means. There's nothing broken about it, everything functions as intended, there's no huge game design oversights, it does what it wants to, it's just that what it wants to do is incredibly underwhelming, and there's nothing I can recommend about this game. But hey, if you want to zone out and play one of the most inoffensive 3D platformers ever made, it's hard to think of a more average and inoffensive 3D platformer than this one.